let's cut to the chase now. The Great Reset. What will it entail for us? What's the plan? What do they want?
In America, we'd call it the Green New Deal that was proposed kind of originally by Senator Markey and a Congresswoman, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. They were laughed out of the room when they first spoke this stuff. It was so ridiculous, everybody thought. But since then, now, at least half of Congress is sympathetic towards it, and all of business, big business, is sympathetic toward it. It's like a virus of the mind, not a virus, like COVID-19, but it's a thought virus. It's just like, man, it just it gets in people's heads, and the idea starts kicking around, and somehow they get deceived into thinking it's a great idea. The idea of, and by the way, let's just dispel this at first, based on what I've already said. When they talk about wealth distribution, and that's frequently, you hear that, there is no wealth to distribute. This is the first big lie that just stands out from an economic point of view. There is no wealth to share. Does anybody think that the people, the global elite running this whole thing, who are rich beyond their wildest imagination, are going to give up one nickel of their wealth to help you or me or anybody else in society, much less the poor? No way. They want to have all of the resources. So when they trick people into think, well, we're going to redistribute the wealth here. No, they're not. They're going to redistribute it towards themselves. You just don't understand what the context of what they're talking about. It's about getting it redistributed from you to them. And they're doing a pretty darn good job globally. During this pandemic, the whole year, at least in America, the companies that have gotten filthy, stinking rich are the Amazons of the world, the Teslas of the world, the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world. These companies are just raking in money while everybody else is falling apart. Businesses are falling left and right in America. Restaurants going out of business, bars going out of business, the small companies going out of business. Just decimated our economy. So having said
is that part of the plan?
Pardon?
That's part of the plan, right? That they want to destroy the small, medium businesses.
It's the crushing of free market economics on a global basis. They want to crush it everywhere, and this has been the goal forever. Even the United Nations 4 years ago, Christiana Figueres, who I know she's in your country right now, I think, working for an NGO. She was the head of climate change. She ran the Paris climate conference, by the way. She was the climate change czar at the United Nations. She said openly in a press conference that the United Nations goal is to replace capitalism and free enterprise with sustainable development. She said they have an intention, they have a timetable, and they have the plan. You couldn't be more blunt as to what was going to happen. When Klaus Schwab came along and started the World Economic Forum and started his whole, everything he's got going now, it's gotten very big since the beginning. This is his mission, to convert all of the big giant corporations of the world, to get them in line with this so that they're part of this crowd that will profit from it. But everybody else is targeted for just getting flattened, just stomped. And this is happening, and nobody's being alarmed about this. Having been a small businessman for most of my life, I cry for these people that are getting driven out of business. They got their life in it. They worked maybe 20, 30, 40 years to build a little business, not a big business, just a little business for themselves. And they're making money. They're supporting their family, maybe their extended family. And all of a sudden, some government politician comes along, you're not essential. You can't run that business anymore. You need to shut your door and lock it up right now and tell your customers they can come back next month. This is just murder of business, just killing it. And I know it's happening in Great Britain. I know it's happening in Europe. It's happening everywhere on the planet right now. And this is the goal of the Great Reset. The Great Reset, by definition, if you think about it, you cannot have a reset unless there's some vacuum that happened before you push the button. You can't rebuild something unless the first thing has been destroyed. Yeah. And we've heard this from the global warming crowd for years. I hate to say why we're flipping back and forth here in just a minute. We've heard this thing for years from the global warming crowd that capitalism is evil, that that mankind is responsible for the warming of the planet, which will certainly kill the whole planet, that the global commons is the only way we must work together in order to save the planet.
Yes.
All of this craziness has been rolled over into the Great Reset to just flatten the economic system of the world so that sustainable development can rise out. Now, global warming, by the way, the solution to it, they never, ever have proposed any other alternative than sustainable development. There is no plan B. There is no retrofitting of capitalism or free market economics. No, it's never been that. There has only been one solution they ever offered to fix the problem, and that was sustainable development. And I will contend from day one that the whole global warming, global cooling back in the 70s, this whole thing has been a made-up social engineering program to drive people into sustainable development. That's the only answer they ever provided for anybody. And that's what Klaus Schwab is suggesting now with the Great Reset. It's so bad, he said. Oh, the world is so bad. Capitalism is so broken. Oh, it just can't possibly survive. What we need to have is let it go, let it die, let it, just go and disintegrate. We'll help it, give it a good push on the way out, make sure it's dead. And then the Great Reset, why, we'll fix everything. We have technology now that can do this. And we have new ideas. Just trust us. You're going to love this. It's going to be great, they say, But you look at the fine print. You look down at the fine print of what they want to do. We will have no autonomy whatsoever as people if these people get their way. There will be no autonomy. Property rights are going out the door. All of Western civilization is based on property rights, the ability for people to own individual property, whether it's the clothes on your back or the diamond ring on your finger or the house that you live in, or maybe you've got a little farm or a little business somewhere, or maybe you have an apartment building. They don't want anybody to own property. Whoa, that's radical. And then they try and tell us, well, it's actually cool not to own property. You don't have to worry about paying the taxes, this, that, or whatever. But, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so if we, the citizens, don't own the property, but there is property because we're living in it, well, who owns the property then? Oh, somebody has to own it, don't they? It's like, well, yeah. And they're saying to themselves, we own it, you turkeys. we will charge you rent for the property that we own, but you don't have to own anything, and that's a good thing for you, they say. Well, I'll tell you what, it's like the walnut shells where you have 3 walnut shells on the table and there's a pea underneath one of them, and the magician goes like this and mixes them all up. Where's the pea? And you turn all 3 over and they're all empty, and the guy had pulled it out somewhere along the way. This is the biggest intellectual sham of history. They're telling us what they're going to do, but nobody thinks beyond, the end of their nose what this means. And if you want a scary read before you go to bed, get the Agenda
Yeah.
21 book. It's still available on Amazon, by the way. It's a big old orange book, 8.5 by 11 size. I think it's 250 pages, something like that. Read the original Agenda 21 book. It'll freak you out. This is what they want to do. This is the Great Reset. Okay, go get the 2030 Agenda document from the United Nations, which is kind of the update for that. Same thing. Read it from cover to cover. They want everything. They want you to have nothing. And I guess at the end of it, I could just ask you, James, are you ready to give up everything in your life for the sake of somebody else controlling your destiny?
Hell no. I'm certainly not. So Patrick, what do we do? Is it too late? Can we still resist at this stage? Because I mean, this year's they've really accelerated the program, haven't they? Under cover of this, yep. I would argue, largely manufactured viral scare.
Yes. And by the way, you haven't told me this, but I've listened to a couple of your other interviews on the internet. I know you're clued in to understand what happened originally at Imperial College of London with Neil Ferguson, with his original computer model stating that 500,000 Brits are going to die and that 1.2 million Americans are going to die. Well, he's been shamed out of the community since then, by the way. People don't know that because there's never a tagline on the story. The guy's software, modeling software, has been absolutely decimated by legitimate computer scientists. Say this thing's a piece of junk. And he's been morally compromised along the way. Not, won't go into that, but he's got his own issues and problems. Removed from boards and stuff. The guy's career is in tatters right now. But he was the guy that started this. We also know that Imperial College and others of that group, like East Anglia, have been those universities that provided the alarmist studies based on computer models to the global warming crowd for decades now. This is where this stuff came from. Same type of computer models, same type of mentality. We're all going to die if we don't do something right now.
Yeah.
And the policies that Ferguson threw out there to the world, he's no policymaker, but he did it. Close all the schools, social distancing, wear masks, and lockdown. Those 4 things were the policies that went out to the whole world. They had a special relationship with the United Nations, and they say so on their website. They fed that all into the UN immediately. The UN, through the World Health Organization, which has treaties with almost every nation on Earth, they pushed the button on those treaties and said, here is what you must do because we have a pandemic. And all of a sudden, boom, the whole world does the same thing at the same time.
Yes.
All this happened here. And here's the problem with global warming. How quickly things change. But the one thing that global warming could never get traction over, and they kept telling us, Al Gore told us we're all going to die in 12 years if we don't do something, They never had any dead bodies. You can't convince anybody there's a threat if there's no dead bodies. And this finally got through to them. And they said, let's leave this horse over here in the stable. And let's get a new horse to ride for a while. And let's show the public a few dead bodies and we'll blame it on this. And we'll scare the crud out of them and get them to do what we want them to do. So the United Nations exercised all their global treaties at the same time. And that's how it got spread to the whole planet. But I ask people over here, if you think that there's some other thing going on here other than what I'm trying to present, just tell me one thing then. Who has the power to shut down the global economy? Listen, how about Democrats? Ooh, those nasty old Democrats probably did it. Oh, no, wait a minute. There's no Democrats in Europe. That's us. We have Democrats. Oh, well, it's the Republicans. It's the Bushes or somebody, doing it. Well, no. That's just us. There's no Republicans in Africa, right? And who did it? Okay, who is it? Oh, it's the EU. That must be it. The EU orchestrated this, and they shut down the global economy. Oh, that maybe, but I don't think the Africans would like that very much if they caught wind of that, right? I don't think South America would like that if the EU, crushed them. Okay, there's none of those. They're not the culprit. Okay, so the question again, who has the power and the moxie to shut down the entire global economic system? You have to follow the money, you have to follow the power, and you have to look at the only person in the room, the 800-pound gorilla, that has threatened to do it already. And you look straight back into the eyes of the United Nations, Christiana Figueres, back through Gru Harlem Brundtland, right straight back to 1973 and the Trilateral Commission. You can just follow this whole thing back down the line of history and say, dang, endgame has just occurred, folks. We're at it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what can we do about it? That's the next question. That's what you ask. I had
totally. Help me now. We're all on the edge of our seats, Patrick, because we're thinking there's a lot of fear around right now, and if you can offer us a crumb of hope or even a kind of a roadmap for escape.
Yes, absolutely. Now is the time for people, citizens, to take to the street. Not with weapons of destruction, not to harm anybody. I would never recommend that, and I don't. That philosophically, I'm totally opposed to that. But now is the time for citizens who understand what's going on to take to the street to message other citizens on what's going on, to bring them out of the fog of deception, invite them to be in the street as well, and grow a movement that cannot be ignored by these boneheads. These people, in my mind, are absolutely insane. Even though they have their own axe to grind, I realize that. And from my point of view, they're absolutely nuts. Their arguments fall apart on so many different levels that when you really understand what they're trying to do, you say, this is insane. It's just absolutely insane, but they're trying to do it anyway. These are the relatively small group of people that must be told the message. You're crazy. We do not accept you. We will not accept you. Get out of public policy. If you want to play scientist or something, go do that. Go buy yourself a laboratory and go have fun. But stay out of public policy. You don't own the world. You don't control the world. And we're not going to let you control the world. That's the message that needs to be sent. Can I digress for one other story?
Please.
It's a little story, if we have time.
Go on. Yeah.
Back when I mentioned the interview I did with the executive director of the Trilateral with Larry King, I discovered something afterwards. I actually went and had breakfast with him. It was early morning. I think it was a Denny's or something open in the building downstairs. And we talked. And I discovered that philosophically speaking, that he was a member of Christian Science, which is kind of a mind-twisting religion that doesn't believe in evil. They don't believe evil exists. And if evil things happen to you, it's only because you're giving assent to it in your mind, that somehow you believe it, it gets you. I never quite understood it. But it's a little bit nutsy. And I've seen this philosophy, not that all Trilateral Commission members were Christian Scientists, there weren't, but I just say that. I ran across this philosophy many times with them directly, where you'll say something to them that would criticize what they're doing. Well, I don't like this policy, X, whatever it is. This policy, this is wrong. And they look at you and say, wow, how can you think that way? It's like blank stare. How could you possibly come up with some other, what we're doing is just so good and we're doing it for you. How can it possibly be criticized? And they're just as sincere as the day is long. They just like the deer caught, in the headlights. Like, yeah. Well, why would anybody resist us? Why would anybody be against this wonderful, wonderful idea that we have? Like there's some paternalistic figure or something responsible for our, childhood. I've never fully understood that. I can explain it a little bit. But this is the mentality that this crowd across the top layer of this global elite, this is their mentality by and large. They can't conceive how anybody would ever be disappointed with them. And nobody has really ever challenged them, James. That's part of the problem. They're so far removed in their ivory towers of academia and in flying their private jets and their castles and their mansions and their whatever. They don't have any contact with real people, and they just operate in a vacuum. And nobody's ever really confronted them to say, "You people, get out of here." You just, if there was a group of people in a town, that was doing something that was going to burn the town down or whatever, the townspeople would run them out of town. No, you can't do that. You just put your matches away. You can't do that. But nobody's really ever challenged these people. I say now it's time to make known to them that we will not accept their nutsiness any longer. We've discovered them. Yeah. We've exposed them. The American people, the European people, the British people, the African people, the Indian people, South American, the Brazilian people. We need to stand up in bulk at this point and say, you people, get out. We don't want you here. Do you read my lips? We don't want you here. Get out of our system. Get out of our public policy arena. You do not belong here anymore. I don't know if we can get this message across, but I guarantee you we won't get it across if we do nothing. If we do nothing, the Great Reset is going to run over us like a steamroller on a hot pavement that's just been laid down by a truck.
Oh, Patrick, thank you for one of the most important podcasts I've ever done. And I hope everyone watching to this or listening to this will feel impelled to take action. I think that we have reached an inflection point in the history of Western civilization, and it's extraordinary. I think what started as a weird cult in the 1930s could, in the space of a few decades, be threatening everything that we've achieved in our civilization. All the prosperity, all the things that we're looking forward to for our children, our grandchildren, all will be rendered as nothing and ground to dust if we don't resist. So thank you, Patrick. And please, if anyone has enjoyed this podcast and would like to support me, you can find me on Patreon or at Subscribestar. This enables me to do more podcasts and vidcasts like this. And I hope you'll agree that those of us who are speaking the truth about these things, we are beleaguered right now. We need support because there is a mighty edifice around the world bent on our destruction. Thank you, Patrick. That was absolutely brilliant. And I hope you'll come on the podcast again sometime, because I think this is going to be I don't know how long it's going to last on the internet. It'll probably get taken off YouTube and et cetera. I mean, do you get that, by the way? Do you get, have you had sort of people sort of trying to shut you down?
Oh, yes, all the time. I've had this for 45 years, James. That's nothing new to me. We were censored back then, and I'm still getting censored. So, I say, okay, you sissies today, not you, but you internet sissies today that get a little bit of censorship and think, oh, my whole life is destroyed. You ain't seen nothing.
Yeah.
We need to just deal with it. And that's one reason I say we need to go to people directly now. We don't rely necessarily on the Facebooks of the world anymore. We need to go to people directly and have one-on-one, face-to-face conversations and reestablish those lines of communication where we can build human relationships again, not some kind of computer relationship. It's very important.